Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and I'm going to be doing the Battle of Alesia on Legendary difficulty. So, a little bit of context, Caesar moved into Gaul from the south, and his first move was to beat back the migrating Helvetii. He then moved into central Gaul using the excuse of fighting the Swabian king Ariovistus. He pushed him back and did punitive expeditions over the Rhine. Caesar later pushed up and did more punitive expeditions against tribes in the area. He moved up to Belgium, fought those tribes, and even went on an expedition to Britain. After he had settled the territory, he retreated for the winter, and that's when all hell broke loose in central Gaul, because the Gauls actually didn't think Caesar was there to stay. He was under the pretext before that he was just there to intervene in local matters, for example, to get rid of migrating tribes or to get rid of an interfering king. But it turned out when the Gauls realized that Caesar was here to stay, they fought against him, and that's what led to this battle here. So basically, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the context and the history of this battle. So, for example, Alesia is when Caesar returns. During that winter, the Gauls had conspired against him. They had ambushed some of his legions. They sent out false messages pretending to tell one of the legions who was in camp for the winter, saying, "Oh, you guys have to come to the rescue of one of your other legions that's been attacked. You know, come out of your camp and we'll lead you to them." One of the legions was led out and they were massacred. So Caesar comes back and he tries to quell the rebellion that's going on, but it's widespread and it's numerous. Anyway, Caesar has his forces mustered, and he's going around, and the leader that he's fighting against is Vercingetorix. So here, finally, after Caesar's loss at Gergovia, Caesar was forced to, he was pushed on the defensive. Caesar then won a couple engagements when Vercingetorix was too active with his cavalry, and he didn't end up winning a particular conflict. Vercingetorix then retreated back into the city here of Alesia. Caesar took the opportunity to then go about and surround the city with large palisades. Now, Vercingetorix did not have the troops needed to fight Caesar, who had all of a sudden taken the initiative. Caesar, right before this battle, had actually gone and recruited some German cavalry members who were going to serve for him. He switched out their small mounts for larger mounts, and that's how he was able to beat a particular Gallic engagement in the weeks and months prior, which led to Vercingetorix not being able to fully defeat Caesar. So Vercingetorix retreated to Alesia, and before he was forced into the city, he actually dismissed all his cavalry and sent them out to the four corners of Gaul to go get more troops to come and relieve them. Anyway, Caesar was not going to be sitting idly. He knew that that was happening. And so what he did is he started to create this huge set of walls. Now, we're led to believe in the commentaries and through some excavations that the fortifications stretch about 11 miles. So they went around the city, much larger than you would see in this map here, but in fact there were, as you can see on the map here, two lines, one facing inwards that they created first, the other one facing outwards to keep back the reinforcing armies. So anyways, when the troops were in Alesia, they were holding out for a while. Caesar was building the whole series of defenses. What they did actually is, if you can see the river here on the south of the map and the river to the north of the map, Caesar's legionaries actually helped build a ditch that connected both of those. He built lots of ditches, lots of traps in order to slow down any people attacking the walls. So once the first wall was created, Caesar ended up having 23 forts ringing around the perimeter. And it wasn't as flat terrain as you see here. The walls went in and out of various points in the valley. It went over hills. And so there were certain points that were actually not completely walled in. And so you don't really see it like this, where it's a huge wall with gaps in the middle. It was mostly a wall with not so much space in between, so much smaller than this, but at intervals, as I said, there'd be camps, and so that allowed Caesar to strategically defend points without having to build an enormous wall like here. That's a little bit not historical. But anyways, the besieged troops on the inside were trying to hold out, and they were getting desperate because the reinforcements were not coming from the Gauls in time. And so what Vercingetorix had to do was make a tough choice, and he was used to tough choices. The reason he was such an effective leader against the Romans was that during his campaigns, he would burn down his own villages and that of the Gauls and move on. So the Romans were, of course, their whole campaign was abroad. They didn't have much access to supplies and reinforcements, and so they were very dependent on their stomach. And so what Vercingetorix would do would be to deny Romans the ability to take over settlements and take the grain supplies and stuff. So Vercingetorix was actually doing a very effective campaign of essentially kicking the Romans in their stomach, and that's the way he was beating them. was in fact making the tough choices of destroying some of their own settlements, some of their own provisions, and that's what made him effective. And so, as I said, he had to do a lot of tough choices, particularly right here. As the Gauls were holding out on the siege, what they had to do is last long enough for the reinforcements to come. And so the reinforcements was going to be a huge tribal contingent. It was enormous, and that's why it took forever for them to arrive. And so in order for Vercingetorix to last long enough, what he had to do was, at one point, he decided to send out the townsfolk of the city because they wanted to save the food just for the warriors, because they said, you know, they need to be fed. You guys are not contributing to the cause. You're just going to make us essentially die sooner than we should before the reinforcements can come. And this is potentially the most important battle of the campaign. So what Vercingetorix does is he expels the women and the children, and he hopes that Caesar will, either have to feed them or Caesar will have to allow them to pass through the lines. But what Caesar does, who's always been cold-blooded, and I wouldn't say he's an immoral guy, but he's particularly amoral. He takes every opportunity he can to advance, to make the best of every opportunity. And so when this chance comes to essentially deliver a morale blow to the Gauls, what he does is he actually denies passage to these townsfolk because he A, didn't want to have to feed them, B, it would have been a morale blow to the Gauls to see their fellow countrymen turned down. He hoped Vercingetorix would have to take them back and therefore decrease their supplies. And then Caesar also was worried that if he started allowing these people to come in through his walls, open the gates, it would be an opportunity for infiltration and stuff like that. So what Caesar does is he actually denies them. And so you find the entire townsfolk of Alesia caught between the walls of the city and the walls of the Romans. And it's a gruesome sight. No one takes them, and they end up starving to death. So very, very tragic. But it just shows the determination of the Gauls at this battle. So anyways, finally, the army comes from the Gauls to come and reinforce Alesia. So at this point, Caesar is our only reliable person telling the tales, and he claims, and we're not to take these at face value, but he claims that the enemy force is going to be numbering around 250,000 infantry and 8,000 cavalry. So while these numbers are probably too high to be believed, we are pretty certain that the Gauls would have made a tremendous effort to break the Romans here and now, because if they were able to, that would be the end of Caesar's campaign, and they might even be able to beat Caesar himself. So anyways, how the battle went down was on the first day that the tribal army arrived, they made a big display, marched down the hills, and really let the defenders know that they were coming. So what they did is, it was a large force that wasn't heavily coordinated. There were 4 leaders in them, and so what they did is on the first day they decided to charge out. They did not a very well organized attack on the walls. They kind of all out charged it in different sections. The Romans, who had prepared lots of defenses, were able to hold various portions of the fort effectively without actually having to commit too many forces, so they could reinforce weak points and all that. And it turned out that at the end of the day, the Gauls were pushed back. They had attacked, I believe, at midnight on their first day, and they sort of did an all-out attack, and it failed. Caesar, in his confidence, even decided to send out his own cavalry when the Gauls initially arrived, and had a cavalry engagement right before the Gauls. So that just showed his confidence. Anyways, the Gauls after that decided that they needed a more strategic approach. So what they did is they started talking to the locals, the people who knew the area, and what they decided to do was actually spread out their forces. And what they did is, if you look in the background here, you see that mountain range. That's a place where Caesar, to the north, was not able to fully create a ring of walls. What happened is the natural terrain, interfered with the building of fortifications, and so you had an area where there was just a Roman camp up there, and that was all that was holding in that ring. So the Gauls decided to move in a significant amount of their forces, 60,000 troops stationed behind that hill, ready to attack the Romans. What the Gauls then do is they attack elsewhere, try and draw the Romans' attention elsewhere around the ring of defenses. They built, the night before, they had built hooks and lots of different ropes to climb the walls, ladders and stuff like that. They started filling in the ditches, and they started attacking all around the defenses of the walls. And at midday, I believe it was, the 60,000 Gauls surged over the hill and charged that weakened and unfinished section of the fort walls that I was talking about. They charged over the hill, surged over it. The Romans are barely able to hold out. The Gauls come crashing over that particular fort, and it seems like it's going to crack. But the Gauls are not able to push in completely because of the tremendous work that the Romans put into their defenses. The Gauls, however, as I said, do start breaking down the walls. They pull down several of the towers, and it's at this point that Caesar, who's been going around the lines rallying his troops, comes in with several more cohorts. Remember, a cohort was about 480 men, although we can estimate that at this point the cohorts would have been severely under strength. Anyways, Caesar sends Labienus, one of his most trusted leaders, to go reinforce the area, and then Caesar himself later arrives with more reinforcements. He's able to stabilize the situation. When Caesar comes with his forces, and I believe he had cavalry, he actually went outside of his own fortifications. As you see me doing actually with my cavalry here, Caesar left his fortifications, came up behind the hill the same way that the Gauls had done, and charged them from the back. Upon seeing that, the Gauls are all of a sudden going to be thrown into panic, and they start routing. The Romans inside the fort are able to push them back, and some mass destruction on that side of the battle. And it turns out that all around the rest of the battlefield, the uncoordinated attacks and the lack of the ability to break these defenses, Caesar, in turning the tide at that one point, breaks the spine of the Gallic contingency. Once that's broken and people start fleeing, there's no way to get them back together. It's a huge tribal army, and there's no way to keep them in position for any longer. They can't rally again. They're too big. They can't feed the army, and so that's going to be the last straw, and Caesar is able to break the Gauls right then and there. So this is going to be a time when Caesar was brought very close to defeat, and it's only because of his preparation and his own bravery. And the way that he actually commanded the battle was that he trusted his subordinates. He allowed them to have the discretion of when do you abandon a fort, how many reinforcements do you commit, where's the best place to sally forth, where's the best place to use cavalry, or all sorts of tactics like that. So Caesar, at this point, shines due to his preparations in the siege works, and also his centurions and his subordinates shine in the way they administer the troops, and eventually how Caesar is able to lead the day. There's an account of him finally coming over the hill, as I said, wearing his magnificent cloak that all his men knew him by. He rallied his troops, and that's how he turned the tide of the battle. So I would say that this battle right here is not particularly historic. I think the only thing that they really got right was the fact that there's Alesia, there's double walls, and there's Gauls attacking. They didn't necessarily get the details of the directions that the battle was fought, the numbers, the layout of the fort with smaller walls and more forts separating them. But, I think all things taken into account, I think they did a good job of reenacting the feel spectacularly. I can say that when I was playing this, I definitely felt like it was just an all-out attack. I felt like Caesar might have felt, or the Romans might have felt, when there's just Gauls attacking from all sides. Oh yeah, and something I forgot to mention, but that you saw in the video, is that during the main assault, when there was those 60,000 cresting the hill, Vercingetorix actually decided to sally forth with his own troops, so they were attacking from the inside, the Romans were being attacked from the outside, and so it's very similar to what you saw here. And I like the fact, actually, I don't want to be ragging on this too much, but what they did get right was the fact that these attacks did not all come at the same time. How you see here, the armies are coming at different times. That's because, one, Vercingetorix on the inside was blocked off from the outside. He couldn't see when the forces were attacking, as well as the various Gallic contingents around the fort themselves. They couldn't really talk to each other as effectively as Romans on the inside, who had more effective couriers. And so the attacks were mostly uncoordinated. So that's what I think this historical battle does very well. And if you guys have gotten this historical battle, I would definitely recommend trying it on Legendary. It's very, very fun, very hard to beat. It took me a couple tries to get it, but I would say it's very satisfactory. Anyways, I haven't been able to play the campaign of Caesar and Gaul yet. I just went and played Battle of Alesia, and yeah, I'm happy I could bring you guys a little bit of history. I hope you enjoyed it. I was not able to put in enough information as I wanted in the very beginning. I was going to talk a lot more about what led to this conflict, what led to Caesar's invasion of Gaul, how it went down, but I think I'll save that for my commentaries when I do the campaign. I'll probably be able to talk more at leisure about all the politics that led to it, the battles, and everything that went down. But anyways, this historical battle is definitely very fun, very cinematic, so I would recommend you try picking it up. It's I actually haven't played any of the other historical battles in the original Rome 2 Total War. I haven't played Teutoburg, I haven't played Battle of Carthage, or anything like that. So this is actually my first historical battle, and I have to say it was very fun. And I might go back and try the other historical battles. But yeah, anyways, very cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This battle is going to keep going on for a while, so I just want to let you guys know that if you want to beat this on Legendary, what you're going to have to do is definitely set your ballista on explosive, target the main enemy forces, like obviously that's important, the clumps, and make sure that they're shooting across from each other, so that when you have Gauls trying to breach the walls, don't have the guy, your ballista piece, don't have the guy next to it shoot directly at the wall, because you're just going to hit it. Have him shoot across to another point of the wall, so you know what I mean, kind of cross over your shots so that you have a better angle. Another important thing is going to be knowing the timing of the tribal armies when they come in. Also swarming tactics. If you are able to isolate some guys, hit them with everything you got, and you'll find that they crumble pretty heavily. You know, maybe make use of whistling shot and all that stuff. And most importantly is going to be the cavalry, as you can see here. I use them pretty effectively. Don't throw them out. Save them for when the Gallic troops charge inside the city. Leave small gaps when you surround the Gauls for your cavalry to knock them out, and then once you find the opportunity to charge them outside the walls, do so. Follow up around the back and knock out the Gauls. The name of the game here is going to be chain routing, essentially. So make sure that when you do hit the Gauls, you hit them with everything you got and you're able to knock them out. That's going to be the best way to save your troops. And you'll see once the battle ends and you take a look at some of the statistics, just how few kills some of the Gauls got. So yeah, it's possible to beat this on Legendary. I hope you enjoyed the historical look at it and some of my tactics. I hope you can beat the battle yourself. It's very fun, and I hope you enjoy. Anyways, look at the kills here. Yeah, the enemy basically got no kills, only 15-0 for a lot of the troops, and as opposed to my guys, look at those. The archers and skirmishers have a ton of ammo, and ballista have a lot of ammo as well, so make sure you use them effectively. Anyways, I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much, and I'll be trying to pick up that campaign soon, and hopefully we can talk more about Caesar. And in the comments, in the description below, I'll have references to a book you can get if you really enjoy Caesar and you want to learn more about him. So see you guys next time.